Hello, and welcome to episode 17 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answer to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about. Now, before we get to today's episode, let's award the much vaunted Expertise is Overrated Tinfoil Award.
As a reminder, this is an award that we give out at the start of each episode to the person who had the most ridiculous point in last week's episode. Do you want to tell us what happened?
Well, this is one of those sort of rare ones where I'm entirely happy to accept it because it's just a pure statement of fact. Batman is just a shit version of Tony Stark, I'm sorry, and he's not a superhero. Batman's cool, don't get me wrong. He's no Tony Stark.
But if Batman isn't a superhero, then nor is Tony Stark. Nor is Iron Man.
See, that's up for debate. I think he warrants inclusion in a superhero world because he develops a suit that is actually capable of doing superhuman things.
Okay.
Whereas Batman just can hit quite hard.
He's the world's greatest detective.
No, that's Alfred, surely.
No, I think it's Batman. You've just watched too many films.
You know, I rate a good Alfred in any kind of story.
I do love a good Alfred. I'm a particularly big fan of Jeremy Irons as Alfred. Yes,
100%. That is a great.
Sass Queen Alfred.
Yeah, but yeah, tinfoil for saying that Batman is shit Tony Stark. I need to stop the rot. I feel like I've won far too many tinfoils as of late.
I had the one the week before.
You did, but you were on such a nice little run, and I seemingly sort of said enough of that. I'll come up with some absolutely outrageous things to say. We need more of your friends back to
just throw things
to guests, so I can throw them.
Yeah, we do.
Anyway, maybe this week you'll say something outrageous. I'm really
it's very likely.
I'm hoping for. Well, yeah, but the problem is, right, that's no longer the bar, because you say something outrageous and then for some reason I just want to one-up you and go even more.
Yeah, you do have that problem. You can't just let me sit there happy in my stupidity.
Quite right. Feedback. Have we got any feedback for this week?
So I was engaged in a long and interesting discussion with a chap called Haxo. Earlier today, Haxo Ironwolf of Twitch fame, who took great issue and umbrage with our early episode where we ranked the 40k Primarchs. Now, given his name is Haxo Ironwolf, do you want to have a guess what his issue was?
Is it that we ranked the Lion too low down in our list?
Not quite.
He's clearly a Dark Angels fan. You can just tell. You take one look at Haxo and you're like, that guy is screaming Dark Angel.
It's the monastic look he's got going on. That's really what it is.
No, did he object to Lehman Russ being,
Not number one appeared to be the issue.
Yeah.
He spent a long time just telling me stuff that Russ had done. And look, Haxo, if you're listening to this, I did appreciate our conversation. I thought it was really, really interesting, and you are clearly very, very well versed and well read in the 40k and 30k universes. But unfortunately,
that won't have helped.
while we're vaguely well read, we also just sort of wing it. I don't know if people have noticed this. We're sort of making this up as we go along. We've never been wrong yet.
Fulgrim is a painting, yes.
Even when we disagree, neither of us is ever wrong.
I mean, he can be as well versed as he likes, but objecting to the fact that we rated Russ not number one is daft.
I went back and checked. We both had him at 5, and I'm going to put my foot down and say that that's as high as he gets to go. I'm not having it. It's not.
I 100% agree. 5 is pretty decent for him. I'm just gonna not say anything more because I don't want to get in trouble. I think top 5 is respectable. Come on.
I mean, it's very, very high flying company, quite literally in some cases. Not putting him above Horus or Sanguinius or Magnus. There was some serious upset that he wasn't above Magnus.
I mean, I put him above Horus.
You put him above Horus, but you've got something wrong with you fundamentally.
Well, yes, but that's neither here nor there.
Or not. Anyway, not to rehash old arguments. If you haven't
Before we spend an hour recapping this and saying, no, Russ at 5.
If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. Also, just anyone who is interested in that, we are going to be doing some more episodes on Warhammer 40k. And in particular, we're going to look at the Horus Heresy and try and discuss the causes of the Horus Heresy. And we think that's not particularly difficult. So we'll probably do that as one of our 15-minute Histories of Fiction episodes.
Yes, which we're famously good at. It's funny that you say we're going to be talking about the Horus Heresy as though there's anything else in the 40k universe worth discussing. I mean, come on now.
I'm fairly sure you've got several episodes on why the numbers don't make sense. But anyway.
Yes, but those episodes, are going to be years in the making because they're so
carefully crafted.
Exactly, so good. We have yet more people who like Ellie more than us.
Yeah. This is just like being back at university.
That's quite funny, actually. But yeah, a Lionheart Discord server regular, Centurion Titus, said he liked the dynamic of having a guest. And he thought it was cool to have another person there to roast Sean. And I think we can all agree that there's one of those more is in fact more situations. I think having more and more people to roast you is just fantastic. Strikes
me that Titus didn't listen to the episode because that's just not what happened. But okay, mate, whatever.
Yeah. One day I'll just get a bunch of surprise guests in just to roast you. And these will be people that have never met you, and it's gonna be great.
That'll hurt. That'll hurt quite a lot. Just a bunch of strangers being mean to me. That'll also be like being back at university, but that's another story for a different time.
Oh wow! I think maybe we'll do a psychiatrist's hour one day where you can just offload your university days to me.
Let's not do that.
Let's in fact move on.
Yes. No, thank you everyone for your feedback. As always, we do really enjoy the discussions. If you want to have them with us, we're on Twitter. And come join us on our Discord server where I think sort of contractually we have to let you shout at us. I think that's how Discord works.
Pretty much, yes.
So yeah,
but you'll never know if we've blocked you.
Just screaming into the void. I've got no idea if Otter's left any feedback. I bought him years ago.
He hasn't, I can confirm.
Okay, cool.
He hasn't.
Anyway.
Today, what are we doing today?
So, today, I thought we'd try something new. Try a new media, new fiction that we haven't touched on yet. Expertise is Overrated. Thought we were getting quite nicely into our groove with Game of Thrones, throwing a bit of Star Wars, quite a lot of Dresden Files, quite a lot of the Lord of the Rings. Let's change things up a bit. So, Brandon Sanderson, big fantasy author. Literally, his books are big.
Okay, that's an argument.
If nothing else, his books are very, very big. And his first major trilogy work, the first Mistborn trilogy, features a very, I'm going to say, interesting character. Right, and that's the character of the Lord Ruler.
See, you're going to say interesting. It's not really what you mean, is it? I can hear it in your voice.
No, but we'll come on to that. What I wanted to do is I wanted to discuss the Lord Ruler, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to also discuss our sort of respective, almost philosophies, because I think the Lord Ruler sort of embodies a pretty material difference in the way that you and I look at the world, and I thought this would be an interesting way to hash some of that
out. Okay. While I don't disagree with that statement that we have slightly differing views, you've picked one heck of a character with which to do this debate.
Yeah, no, I've really characterized this debate as I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy, right?
I mean, not to give the game away, but to try and defend the Lord Ruler is going to be a challenge.
I don't think we need to defend him. I think we can probably
but
agree
we'll
that
get to that.
he's not great.
I think. I mean, the guy literally calls himself the Lord. That's pretty on par with some pretty heinous people from actual history, which
Yes.
kind of gives the game away there as well. Yeah, but I like your idea there, where we can discuss philosophy, wax lyrical about the means and the end, etc.
Yes, I think that's
It's
a good idea. But I think we probably do need to set the scene at least a little before we do that, because otherwise we'll just start yelling at each other about Kantian ethics or something, and we'll lose
straight for Kant. Okay,
we'll lose lose listeners very quickly. So anyone who hasn't read Mistborn, I would quite strongly recommend you go and read, at least read The Final Empire. It's the first book in the trilogy. It came out in 2006, so it's, as far as I can make out, I think it's Brandon Sanderson's second full published novel. His first being Elantris. So, Final Empire.
Can we just talk about that for a second? Because The Final Empire, fantastic book, and you were right to recommend it.
Yes.
Second ever novel this guy wrote. Unbelievable.
It's really quite something, I think.
Yeah. And the whole trilogy is fantastic. I mean, it's no longer really a trilogy, but the whole thing is fantastic.
It's spiraled a little.
He can make 3 books of 3 each, and then maybe more.
Yeah, I'm going to do 3 trilogies of 3 books, except I discovered that writing the interlude between trilogy 1 and 2, I really liked the characters that I made. So I may now be doing 4 trilogies, plus a 10-book epic fantasy series, plus other miscellaneous series, plus 2 YA trilogy. The man has... I'm going to go out and say, I think he's got a problem.
In 15 years as well, I guess we should add. Yeah.
It's unimaginable the rate at which he churns out words. I mean, you look at someone like our favourite Jim Butcher, who let's be fair, can churn out a Dresden Files novel pretty quickly.
Yes, but a Dresden Files novel compared to, say, The Final Empire, that's like a chapter.
Yeah, and then you look at some of his later stuff. The Stormlight Archive books are like each 400,000 words long.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's madness. It's phenomenally impressive. But say it quietly, you do a little bit wonder what someone like George Martin or Pat Rothfuss is doing.
No. Say it very loudly. Say it straight at them. What the fuck are you guys doing? Come on. Pull the finger out already. It's ridiculous. George R. R. Martin just sits around going, yeah, I'm having some writer's block. Oh, fuck off. How many years of writer's block can you possibly have? the fucking world has written the book for you. Just, write down what they say. Jeez.
Yeah.
If you can't tell, I'm a little frustrated that the next Song of Ice and Fire book hasn't come out, because I really want to prove Sean wrong about so many of his theories.
And I'm really hopeful that it never comes out, because I don't know that
Brandon Stark dies.
I don't know that my ego could take more disappointment. But Mistborn, so you've read it.
Well,
yes.
Someone has read it to me.
Ah, yeah, of course. Sorry, I keep forgetting you can't read.
It's very important to remember that, yes.
Is it the only Sanderson that you have consumed?
As of this moment, yes. Okay. I do have a few of his books lined up, but as is ever the case with any sort of book list or film list, it's a list that never gets shorter.
So you've also, I guess, not read Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, and Bands of Mourning, the sort of follow-up accidental Mistborn series.
No, so that's one that I've actually got, and I'm ready to go.
Okay, cool.
The thing with Sanderson for me is that it is, I mean, how else could it be with books that long? It is very epic. It is grandiose, and that doesn't, I'm not saying that to detract from it, but it's,
so,
you need to take a break.
So a lot of it is, and Stormlight in particular is, but Stormlight is written to be a challenger to Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, even probably Lord of the Rings. I don't know that that's true of Mistborn. I think Mistborn is very character driven, and in a weird way, although obviously it deals with sort of world ending conflict, a lot of it feels really petty. Does that seem fair? Am I being unfair there?
I suppose the
all
way
the
it all
conflicts are
starts,
interpersonal, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, the whole thing starts off with Kelsier, one of the main protagonists. Obviously, if you're a protagonist, you're main. It starts off with a bit of vendetta against the Lord Ruler, right? The quite obvious
just a small one,
anti-hero of the piece. And so you're right. It all starts from a very character versus character, and all the other characters sort of get dragged in, and the world-ending, impending doom, apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, kind of just sort of happens alongside.
yeah. It's like it's very well written, but
it really is. Yeah,
Kelsier's plan in Final Empire is to overthrow steal the Lord Ruler's treasury, and maybe try and overthrow him in the process, because Kelsier is nothing if not melodramatic. But yeah, sort of the world-ending threat, the coming of the mists, all of that, the release of Ruin, that all sort of happens alongside the narrative.
Yeah, and what I really liked about it is that, I mean, massive spoiler alert, obviously, but the Lord Ruler doesn't do so well at the end of the first book.
He murders the shit out of Kelsier, though.
He does,
which is really funny.
Shit out of Kelsier, but then Vin very easily kills him.
But she figures out his secret, right?
Exactly.
That's the whole point. He is phenomenally powerful. There's no two ways about it. He's strong enough that he can use his, and we'll need to come on to allomancy, feruchemy, and hemalurgy, because, gosh, confusing. But he can use his allomantic power to like push and pull metals that are inside someone, which is a thing that no one else seems to be able to do.
Well, except Vin, right?
Yes, but and this is where I think you're not having read more Sanderson is going to put you at a slight disadvantage. What Vin is doing there is tapping into a purer wellspring of power, right? So, because Vin draws on the mists, doesn't she?
Yeah. Does she do that in the first book?
Right at the very end, she does.
Yeah, because that's where she gets. Yeah, of course.
That's where she gets the power
trying to get.
That's where she gets the power to pull the Atium bracers off the Lord Ruler, which is what causes him to die.
Yeah, that's right.
Right at the end, and that's because she's drawing on the mist. But that is essentially drawing upon like pure what you call investiture, like pure magic, essentially.
Well, it's the power of preservation.
It's the pure power of preservation. Yes.
For reference, preservation and ruin are the two gods. Ish.
We'll go with gods. It's the easiest way to describe. It's fundamentally incorrect, and yet also the easiest way to describe them.
Yeah, it's like a universe where
they are and were human adjacent people who took up shards of a godlike power, right, which had a purpose, and Ati takes up Ruin and becomes Ruin, and that fundamentally changes who they are. Same with Leras taking up preservation,
which, if you've only read the trilogy, the actual trilogy, you would have no idea of no way of knowing.
You have no way of knowing, and it doesn't change the book.
It doesn't change. It doesn't even matter in the slightest.
It doesn't matter in the slightest. But that is what happens. Yeah, so you're right. Vin is drawing upon the like shardic power.
Yeah,
that godlike power, essentially.
And at the time, you have no idea that that's what she's doing, because she tries to spend most of the second book recapitulating that power, right? Trying to draw in the mists and trying to use them. And then we slowly start to see this idea that there is a bigger bad than the Lord Ruler, and the whole world seems to just be ending.
And that is Ruin himself.
That is Ruin, yeah. And it's not until, I guess, quite near the end of the third book, I think, right, where people realize that the Lord Ruler was trying to maybe do something good. Which I guess is where the episode, the title of this episode comes from.
And that's where the title of this episode comes from. But it becomes really complicated because we learn, I think in the second book, that the man who became the Lord Ruler was not the man who everyone thought was prophesized to become the Lord Ruler.
Yes, and that guy's name I never remember.
So it was Alendi was the man who was prophesized.
Alendi, yes, and it was Rashek instead.
It was Rashek who became
his Terrace Pac-Man, right?
His Terrace Pac-Man, exactly. And that's part of where the Lord Ruler's power comes from, because Rashek was a ferrochemist. So if you're still with us and don't know anything about Mistborn, a ferrochemist is someone who is capable of storing up attributes of themselves. So strength, health,
knowledge,
sight,
age.
Being and then then there's weird ones like age, and then as you move forward there are really weird ones like fortune and identity and connection, and it all starts to get very, very abstract. But essentially Rashek was capable of storing up attributes of himself, so make himself weaker for an hour a day, say, to then at a later time be able to redraw upon that strength, and you were able to compound it as well. This is where it gets very interesting. So make yourself half as strong as you normally would be for an hour. You can then spend an hour twice as strong, or half an hour 4 times as strong, or 15 minutes 8 times as strong, or a second 1,000 times as strong. Right? So it's a weird, but it's completely, I guess, in sort of thermodynamics terms, it's completely neutral, right? You don't create or destroy, you just change and use at a different time.
Yeah, of sorts, yeah.
Of sorts.
But and it's to be fair to Sanderson, it's a really clever way of doing something magical.
Yeah.
And that's the whole theme of this trilogy, right? I mean, feruchemy and allomancy, the sort of defining words in there, I guess, coming from ferum for iron and allo for presumably alloys, I guess.
Alloys, I think.
Yeah. So there's this. It's magic that's based on metals, which is a really fun idea. And so the the metal mines that we described, so the ferrochemists who can store things in them, really cool idea. Yeah. And then of course the other, and we don't actually know about feruchemy for quite a long time.
Half to 2/3 of the way through Final Empire is when we start to hear about it.
Yeah, and then it seems to just be like a Lord Ruler thing. Because I don't think... Do we find that about Sazed?
I think you do, because don't we find out about it when Saze rescues Vin from Kedrick Shaw?
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. So he's like the first feruchemist we see. But before then, I mean, the big deal was allomancy, right? There's lots and lots of allomancers in the world.
Yes, exactly.
And swing a cat hitting allomancer.
It's not. You're not wrong. Allomancy is different. Allomancy doesn't exist in the time of Alendi and Rashek.
Yeah,
and I can never quite work out if Rashek created allomancy, because he held Ruin's power, so I don't think he could have created allomancy, but I think he was maybe able to unlock it or something like that.
Well, it's all wrapped up in the Well of Ascension, which is one of the names of one of the books.
Yes.
And B, sort of where or at least where we think the finale of the first book kind of takes place. And it seems to just be a place where there is a lot of preservations missed.
I don't think it's preservation. I think it's ruin.
But I think
preservation is mists. I need to check.
But I think allomancy comes from the Lord Ruler having bound up some of the power of preservation into...
No, the Lord Ruler binds up ruin.
He binds up ruin, but
ruin is bound at the Well of Ascension.
But aren't the beads?
The beads are beads of preservation.
Yeah. This is where it gets a bit confusing.
So, exactly how it works, I'm not sure. We're gonna, I think, just say that I really should have checked this because this is really easy to check. Oh well. After the Lord Ruler becomes the Lord Ruler, a new power enters the world, which is allomancy, as you said, which is also really cool, but very different.
But also very similar.
But also very similar. So all of these are like metal related, obviously, as you said, as the word implies. But by consuming specific metals and specific alloys, certain individuals are capable of burning those metals, having consumed them, in order to produce effects upon the world. It's just magic.
Exactly.
It's just magic.
But what's neat is that I think the same metals, you can use a metal in allomancy and you can use the same metal in ferrochemy, and they'll have very similar roles in that magical process.
Sometimes, but also, so tin has a very similar role, right? So tin, if you burn it as a allomancer, it enhances your senses. Ferrochemists can use tin mines to store up the attributes of their senses.
Yeah.
But steel and iron, for example, so they allow you to essentially act like a magnet if you're an allomancer.
Yeah.
So pushing and pulling any metals, not just iron-based metals or magnetic metals, but any metals to or away from you.
Which is not a very useful skill to store up in a...
But it's not a skill that's capable of being stored up in a mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So iron is... I can't remember what iron stores. Iron stores weight, steel stores speed, I think.
Speed. Yeah. I was going to say, I'm trying to come up with a way that that's still the same kind of ideas.
I think the point is some of them are,
weight being
some
pushing
of them aren't.
and speed being like pulling or something. I don't know, something like that. Probably the other way around, actually. But yeah, no, there's overlaps. There's differences. Ultimately, it's very cool. I mean, the idea of a coin shot, just to we're throwing so much jargon at the listeners here. It's bad.
Yeah,
but we should explain. So, allomancy, as you said, was born once the Lord Ruler sort of takes up his power, becomes the Lord Ruler, reborn from Rashek, and then he created what are then referred to as Mistborn, right?
Sure.
These are allomancers who can use all the metals to achieve what those metals may or may not do.
Yes,
and over time, he put lots of restrictions in place that people who have allomantic powers were the nobility. They weren't allowed to, go and have kids with the common folk, the Scar, as they're called. With the idea of, obviously, we want to keep this power close to home, and he can exercise a lot of control over the nobles because there's not many of them.
Yeah.
But over time, nobles couldn't help themselves. There was a lot of, fathering and mothering of children with whoever sort of happened to walk by. And the power almost seems to have got diluted in many ways, to the point where we get mistings.
I think that's absolutely right. Yeah, so we know that the Lord Ruler will come on to the mixing of his powers in a moment, but we know that he's allomantically stronger than Mistborn, who are born now, right? Now being during the books, he is a stronger Mistborn than Kelsier, and he's a stronger Mistborn than Vin.
Yeah, whether or not he's stronger than Ellen, though, would be a question.
Yeah,
we'll get to that, I think.
Yeah.
And he was probably only on par with the original Mistborn he created, you would have thought.
You would think, but they probably weren't twin-born. And this is where it gets weird. So someone who is both someone who is both a Mistborn and a feruchemist is what you start calling in the later books, so after the ones that you've read, a twinborn.
Yeah.
Right? A twinborn enables someone to do some very, very clever and interesting things that are the source of the Lord Ruler's real power.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to butcher this, but essentially, if you are capable of storing an attribute in a metal mine, so say steel, for example, you can store physical speed in a steel mine. If you then consume that steel mine, you can burn it, but rather than getting the ability to be able to push on nearby sources of metal, you gain access to like what you stored, but multiplied like is it logarithmically?
Yeah, well, I always
Basically.
picture the burning of, I think it's duralumin. I always
Yeah.
the one that essentially helps you burn metals like
Super. Yeah.
more strongly. Yeah, like the supercharge.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, you're right. You use your metal mine to store something, you ingest it, and then you like super burn it.
You don't even need to super burn it. So this is the thing. So you burn the example that we see in later books most often is gold, because we meet a gold twinborn. So it's someone who's capable of burning gold allomantically and also storing health.
But gold is such a pointless one.
Allomantically, yes. Feruchemically, no. Being able to store good health is phenomenally useful. And then if you store good health and then consume the metal mine and burn it, you get back more health than you stored. Right? You don't store it for its allomantic ability. You store it for you burn it for its feruchemical ability.
Which is where the thermodynamics,
the laws of thermodynamics break.
The
thermodynamics break, but the thermodynamics break because
magic.
Allomancy creates energy. It just does. That's how it works.
Magic.
It's magic. So say you stored 1 unit of health in a
oh god, you're not about to do maths, are you?
No, I'm just gonna say you store 1 unit of health in a metal mine, consume it, burn it, you get 10. You can then store 9 of those in another metal mine. Essentially.
Yes.
And that's how you compound up how much health you have. And if you're the Lord Ruler, you can do that with age.
Yes. And that's why, if it wasn't clear up until now, the events with Alendi and Rashek occur, I want to say thousands of years.
8,000 years, I think.
8,000 years, yeah. Before we meet Vin and Kelsier and all the main characters. So he is effectively immortal. I think his head was chopped off at one point, right?
Marsh, I think, has seen him decapitated.
Yeah, and burnt to what essentially amounts to like a few bits.
Yeah. He's essentially capable of regenerating from any injury because he probably spends most of his time storing health, not burning health, right? Same way, because he just can. Because he's like, yeah.
Yeah, although the question remains, if he's been burnt to a crisp, his armbands will have been removed, and that's what ultimately kills him.
Well, I guess probably he's like just got some stapled inside him or something.
You're going to say magic.
Yeah, basically magic.
Magic. He survives because of magic.
He survives because of magic. But
no, so he's functionally immortal.
Functionally immortal.
Really old.
Thousands of years old.
Supremely powerful.
Supremely
he's a twinborn.
Individually powerful.
And he's a dick.
This is sort of where the issue arises. Half an hour into the podcast, as ever. This is where we get to it.
For once, I think we actually did something in 15 minutes, give or take. We did it
I'm
badly.
going to say that. I'm going to say that we've done Mistborn in 15 minutes. The question,
trilogy and more.
Yeah. The issue that we have is we know that when Rashek took up the power at the Well of Ascension 1,000 years ago, he had the power to reshape the world, Scadrial, the planet.
Yes.
And look what he did with that power.
I mean, he was phenomenally powerful.
He was
he lost a lot of that power 1,000 years later, and he was still far and away the most powerful. Certainly, Allomancer or whatever you want to call him. On the
planet. I'm fairly sure that Brandon Sanderson has said across the Cosmere, so across essentially like all of his published works, other than the shit, what are they called? The Reckoners trilogy, which is completely unrelated. The Lord Ruler is probably the most powerful non-shardic being we've ever seen. Right?
Well, and yeah, sorry, go on.
And that's when he's not carrying the power from the Well of Ascension.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think I think he's later referred to as the Sliver, right? Because he's essentially, I think it's like he was the sliver of the power of a god, or whatever essentially you want to say. Yeah, he was that powerful, which is interesting because Vin also carries the power of the Well of Ascension at one point, doesn't she? Or is it? Yeah, it's Vin, right?
Vin does, and then Sazed does as well.
Yes, yeah. When he essentially just makes everything good again.
He becomes harmony. Yeah,
yeah. Fantastic book, guys. Honestly,
yeah, no, really good. Go read.
We're doing this absolutely no justice, but yes, phenomenally powerful being, most powerful being in the horribly named Cosmere. So what? Why is that bad?
So, I guess the problem becomes if you're invested with, as the genie in Aladdin says, unlimited cosmic power, and you use it to make the world into basically an awful place. And we should be clear, the world of Final Empire is truly horrific.
Yes.
It has a caste structure worse than basically anything that we see in medieval history.
By design.
By design, exactly.
By the Lord Ruler's design.
By the design of an infinitely powerful being, you create a group of second-class citizens for no reason that I can discern other than really you can.
No reason other than you can. I think the idea was, which I sort of alluded to earlier, is that he made a few people allomancers.
Sure.
But he wanted to exercise control over that population, keep it small, so they became the nobility. So you essentially had to make sure that everybody else was a second-class citizen.
But you don't...
And not worthy of, prolonged interaction, essentially.
You don't need to make the Scar, the second-class citizens, just quite so awfully treated. You could just say, magic belongs only to the priesthood.
But that may not necessarily have been just the Lord Ruler.
But
it's also just nobility being a bunch of dickheads.
Yeah, but he's also in charge. And
true. What's it called?
He can basically read minds.
Yeah. Yeah, but why would he?
I mean, why would he? But he can do.
And I guess he's got the ministry, doesn't he?
He's got the Inquisitors. He has the Inquisitors. But also,
who are scary fuckers.
The process of making Inquisitors is horrific, and that's an art that he invents. Now, obviously, invents is the wrong word. It exists because it's Ruin's equivalent of Allomancy. But
he invents the Steel Inquisitors, yeah.
He creates Steel Inquisitors, yeah.
We should mention this is the third sort of big art of metallurgy, where you essentially just ram specific types of metal through specific body parts to...
Right, it's not just that, though. You ram those spikes through a person, killing that person,
yes,
they have to be allomantically or feruchemically active, right? And then that steals that power and gives it to the end recipient of the spike.
yeah.
Right, but all Inquisitors have what, 5 spikes at least?
Some 5 or 7, I can't quite remember.
So
I always just picture the 2 through the eyes.
they've got 2 through the eyes and at least 3 in the back, and I think they start to get more and more and more as the books go on.
Yeah,
But like even 5 people to make 1 Inquisitor.
but he essentially, yeah, exactly, yeah, you're right, yeah. You have to steal that power, but he essentially creates those Inquisitors to make sure that the nobles aren't, screwing with the Scar.
Mm.
No, sorry, not screwing the Scar.
And but the also the only reason that he wants to limit allomancy to the nobles is linked to his desire to ensure that no one ever arises to challenge him, right? So the only person who's ever, other than Vin and Deus Ex Machina, I can feel Brandon Sanderson fans reaching for their phones. Other than Vin and sort of prophesized events 1,000 years in the making, where another person manages to usurp his intentions to take up the power again, the only person who's ever going to be capable of challenging the Lord Ruler is another full Twinborn, because they're the only person who's going to be able to match him in speed or strength or healing or whatever.
Just anything, yeah.
Just anything, realistically.
I mean, to I guess put this into context of the first time we ever really meet the Lord Ruler, right? Because we see what to us looks like a very powerful allomancer, and being Mistborn at the time of the book is already such a rare and phenomenal thing, right? The people who can use all the metals, it's really quite something. And Kelsier is one of the best and like super scary, and he can kill people very easily, and he can do all sorts of amazing things.
Well, he runs through like full squads of people specifically designed to kill Mistborn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he takes on 20 Haze Killers, I think, and just murders them as if they're not there.
Yeah, it's absolutely outstanding, and you respect this guy from the very beginning, partly because he also does it all for the right reasons and so on. Maybe. I think that's what he tells himself anyway.
That's what he tells himself.
But there's the bit where we meet the Lord Ruler for the first time, and his mere presence is so unbelievably strong. Like, he sends out such a strong allomantic signal that it pretty much just stifles everyone. It like almost physically overwhelms people there.
Yes, no, that's
just
right.
by stepping out of his carriage. It's ridiculous. Like, he's just on another level of powerful.
That's true.
More fool Kelsier for trying to take him on. I mean,
but I mean, we see Kelsier take him on, and he does
as well.
He gets a spear through the Lord Ruler, right? He actually does it.
Well, no. The Lord Ruler just stands there, lets him throw a spear through.
That was going to be my point. My point is, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Kelsier is the single most powerful up until that point. Like, he looks like the hero, right? He looks like your big damn hero.
Yeah, he's
swoop in and save the day. Ned Stark, exactly. He stabs the Lord Ruler through the chest with the spear. The Lord Ruler sort of looks at it, and then I think he punches Kelsier so hard he breaks his neck.
I think that's right. Like, it's such an undignified end, isn't it? It's just like, oh, you're dead now.
Yeah, and then he says, like, goes back to his carriage and just says to his Inquisitors, kill literally everyone.
Yes.
So this comes back to my point. Like, we can see that the Lord Ruler, and I think he even says this when he ultimately dies, like, you don't know what I was doing for you. You don't know what I was saving you from.
Yeah.
Was ruin, essentially. He thinks of himself as the one keeping ruin at bay. But
yeah, but at the time we don't know that that's even a thing.
at the time we don't know that's even a thing, and even now looking, we can look at the whole thing holistically and just say, I don't judge him by what he thought he was doing and what he said he was doing. Judge him by what he did, and what he did was create a regime that is so brutal that it's almost comical in how bad it is.
Yeah,
like it's almost a pastiche of dystopia.
Yeah. So I guess we're at our actual question, right? Is he a misunderstood, quote unquote, hero? Were his I guess his motivations somewhat good, and did that justify what he did, or was he just a maniacal despot? Now, I think we said right at the beginning that it's very hard to argue with the latter.
I think if you look at the definition of a despot as someone who has power because they're the strongest, that's a literal definition of the Lord Ruler.
Yeah, no, he's undeniably a despot. There's I mean, no one surely can argue with that.
Surely,
even I cannot argue with that. But the point is, did he? Because we obviously see him 1,000 years after.
Yes,
he gets to the Well of Ascension, and so that's, I guess, the calculation we have to do in our heads. Is does he end up in this situation purely because he's tried everything he can? And he's spiraled out of control, and he's come to a place where, yes, he's subjugated the majority of the population in the most horrific of ways. He kills people so he can create super death, crazy killers. He essentially pulls the planet closer to the sun or something like that to try and stop something, and it horribly goes wrong.
He pulls the planet closer to the sun in order to try and stop the mists. But that then raises the temperature of the planet to such a degree that everyone on it would die, so he creates volcanoes to spew ash into the air.
Yeah.
To
counteract all that.
All of that. Like,
it's a literal hellhole that he's created. But I mean, it's hard to fault a guy for not fully understanding what it means to move planets around. I mean, I'm sure that's not something you tend to do on a regular basis.
No. And I mean, Say's, when he takes up the power, is able to fix everything, basically. But that's because he's got his copper mines, which are sort of full of the accumulated knowledge of millennia, which means that he can redo geography and move the planet using stars and stuff. It's very, very well done and very well written.
It's easier, right? Because the Lord Ruler had to move the planet to try and do something which was a complete uncharted territory. Say's had the benefit of essentially just undoing things. Yes, still wildly difficult, but
Yes, and also Say's isn't trying to fix the mist because the Szed becomes the mist, right? So he knows they're going away now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he is harmony. The
he
conjugation of ruin and preservation, I guess. So this is the question we have to ask: Is the Lord Ruler the person he is because he's just a douche, or did he genuinely try to do the right thing, and things just kept getting so out of hand that he just became the embodiment of the means, or the end justifies the means?
Well, I think that the argument in his favor, I guess, and I'll make that first, is that it's the classic: every problem you fix creates two more, right? And all you're ever doing is fixing problems that you yourself created because you couldn't foresee the impact of your actions. And I think we're meant to. He doesn't get smarter when he takes up the power of preservation or ruin or whoever it is, right? He's still just Rashak, the Terraceman Pac-Man. So maybe he was trying his best. Maybe that's all that it was, and we've never been in that position. You know that you've got limited time with the power in that state, and all you can really do is try and do your best in a very short period of time. And what we see is his best, and it's people are still alive, right? It has industry. The Final Empire has industry. It has canneries. It has all sorts of things. We know he was.
But it's interesting that you mentioned canneries specifically, because
Yeah, no,
in the Lord Ruler's reign, right?
Yeah,
is the only technological advancement that we see.
Oh, I think there's all sorts of like metal foundries and stuff.
Yeah, but for example, before he becomes Lord Ruler, there is gunpowder. And one of the things he does is make sure that people forget that gunpowder is a thing. Because obviously armed rebels with guns would be much more dangerous than armed rebels with bow and arrow.
True.
So he actively suppresses a lot of technological advancement, and not for the good of the people that he's then supposedly trying to protect.
Except that we know that he lays down caches of canned food in preparation for the second coming of the deepness and all of that. Right? He is building an ability of his people to withstand what he knows is coming. And that's pretty
the shelters,
laudable. The shelters, etc. That's not nothing.
Okay, well, this is unexpected. I thought I was going to be arguing for Hero, but it turns out you are going to be arguing for.
No, I'm doing my utmost to make the case before I.
No, but the shelters are in fact, yes. I think he sort of sees that shit is going to hit the fan. But ultimately, we don't necessarily really know that, because in having bound up Ruin within himself, as long as he's alive, the only real danger the planet faces is being too close to the sun, which admittedly is entirely on him. But Ruin is controlled because he's controlling him. So it's Vin who unleashes all that onto the world again.
Well, that's only because Ruin is only controlled because Ruin's power gets dissipated at the Well of Ascension, and then slowly over time recoalesces at the Well of Ascension. And the intention was that, I think Rashek's intention was to do the same thing again, essentially during the next cycle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ruin's not.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm being a bit too generous, but he had a plan, and one that worked for 1,000 years, and it's hard to say. Well, why wouldn't it have worked again? Well, it didn't because Vin.
It didn't because Vin.
Vin messed up. Yeah. Well, not messed up because ultimately, obviously, happy ending and all that, but yeah. So yeah. So this is obviously the bit that you wanted to have, right?
Is that enough? That's my question. Is that enough?
Does the end justify all means? AKA the generation of what is more or less a slave society that gets treated like absolute shit, and they're supposed to be happy that they get treated like absolute shit. The creation of the Steel Inquisitors, which, as you said, requires the death of at least 5 people.
Yeah.
To create one heinous being. The creation of the Koloss, these ogre-like, troll-like humans that we later find out are also just metallurgically changed people. And I guess the what the other one's called, I forget.
The Kandra.
The Kandra, yeah, the sort of the spies that he creates.
Yeah.
Who call him father, which is just
I mean, he turned the Kandra were turned into were his friends, right? He did that to his friends.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah. So does the utter destruction of by any definition of good, the destruction of any good human society. Is that worth it for the sake of ensuring its survival by your own potentially flawed logic? Not yours, but the Lord Rulers, that is.
I mean, my feeling is no. Quite simply, I think if you.
What's the alternative? I guess is the issue, right?
But I think that the assertion that the alternative is the utter destruction of everything is pretty much wholly unsupported. What we don't see, like, we don't know what the fail state is, right? When Rashek picks up the power, we know that Alendi is worried, or sorry, no, the one of the Terrace world speakers, whose name I forget, is worried that Alendi is going to release Ruin, but like, we don't know what Ruin is going to do. I mean, it's not great. Name's not great, but you've got preservation as well, right? They're there. But more than that, though, like, if you just look at the person that Rashek was before he took up the power, he's not a nice person. He's not a good person. He is essentially a terrorist man supremacist because they've got Ferukemi. He thinks that they ought to be in charge. Quan, that's the world speaker's name. He can't handle the fact that the terrorist prophecies point to Alendi as the hero of ages. Although there's a point to be made that those prophecies might be being manipulated by Ruin. But even more than that, just his behavior, his heinous treatment of other human beings, as far as I can tell, for no reason other than that he can, it feels pretty inexcusable. And I think my counter argument would be Say's, right? His behavior when he is invested with far more power than Rashek had, because he gets both preservation and ruin. At that point, what he's capable of doing is making a society that is his best attempt at utopia. And he doesn't form an instant and long-lasting utopia, of course, because it's something that has to be worked at. But I don't see how you can look at what could have been done with that power and then look at what Rashek did with that power and go, oh yeah, but he was trying his hardest. So, we can excuse all of that. I think, I just don't think that you can.
No, it's great that you mentioned that as well, because the imagery is so powerful there, right? Because Sayes gets the power for ruin preservation after Vin sacrifices herself. Because if I remember right, I think she takes preservation's powers and she takes the mists.
Yes, which is preservation.
To then essentially just kick Ruin's ass, and it kind of kills them both, coalesces them into this one thing that Caesar then takes.
Yes, no, it's
probably doing a horrible job of explaining that, but that's sort of what happens.
No, it all gets very like symbolic.
Yeah, very much so. Like thinking from the Matrix or just Jesus.
Yes.
Vin and her husband Ellen sacrifice themselves. Caesar gets all the power and does remarkable things. Like he recreates flowers, because flowers were such a thing no one had remembered.
No one could remember flowers.
So you end up in this world which is just utopic, as you said, phenomenal. And then you think, well, what the fuck was?
And he then the crucial thing with Sayes is he then sticks around and continues to like marshal the world that he's built and continue to gently try and steer it on the right path. He doesn't set himself up as a tyrannical dictator, even a benign one. He's just not there. but he's still watching and still trying his utmost to
Yeah.
make the world a better place for everyone.
The ultimate supernatural shepherd.
Exactly.
So yeah. This is why this is such an extreme example, because even if the end justify the means, the means are so completely outrageous in this case.
Yeah, this might have been a slightly unfair one to pick.
I mean, I know you tried to point me, in the light of someone who's just cool, calm, logical, and collected, and humanity be damned if that's what serves humanity or me.
But what you could also say, right, is that Rashek is actually a really bad example of ends justify means, because his means are so bad that
his means are so bad. But I also think that quite often when we see these literary examples of means justify the end, we tend to see it from a perspective of someone who's actually just a bit smarter than Rashek was.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of my point, right? You don't have to make the Scar quite so horrifically downtrodden. You don't have to turn every single living ferrochemist into a Mistwraith. You don't have to create this category of being that is sort of axiomatically better than everyone else, and then use that power as a bribe to bring kings to your side. You don't have to do any of those things. You could just make a slightly more caste-driven world, put yourself at the top, and then put allies below you.
But you don't even have to do any of that. You could do literally, as you say, what CZ does.
You could. Because, but let's assume that you're someone bent on a little bit of rulership, not despotism or Lord Ruler or anything like that. But
maybe not Lord Ruler, the Master Ruler. Sir Ruler? Sir, I don't really know a term that's better. Sir, I think,
Sir
is
King?
a step down. Sir King? Okay, fair enough. But at that point, your ambition is already going. Your ambition is automatically going to be the thing that leads to your downfall there.
Maybe,
right? Because once you have power, the only thing you're afraid of is losing that power, and that's, I think, when you start doing these absolutely batshit insane human experiments and whatnot. And for the record, everything he does is just plain wrong. It serves no purpose, I think, to preserve the world, even if you try to understand his warped logic.
This is the other side of it, right? Yes, the attempt to preserve human life is absolutely laudable, but if what you do, and I watch how I say this, but like the world that he creates is so bad that there's a strong case to be made that he was probably better off just not.
Yeah.
Don't be quite such an ass.
Absolutely.
Basically.
And I think we'll probably revisit this at some point if we ever do an episode on the Emperor of Mankind.
No, that's a very good comparison, actually. That's one I hadn't considered.
Because he's got a very similar idea of, we need to preserve humanity, and in fact, we need to put humanity on the pinnacle of the entire universe. And in so doing, he essentially
Space is much smarter.
He's much smarter, and I think he's a much better example of means justifying the end, because
he is. He's a much better debate to have this.
Yeah, because ultimately his argument is, for the sake of humanity's greatness, I will sacrifice trillions of humans if I have to, which is kind of a fucked up thing to say, but it makes more sense.
I've constantly got my eye on the prize. That's the distinction, I think, with Rashek. Rashek's issue, he has many, many issues, but his big one seems to be he loses sight of his goal.
Exactly.
Which is the preservation of humanity. So if you're not trying to preserve humanity and all you're doing is just making the lives of humanity awful, why are you doing that other than sadism?
Exactly.
What's your excuse this is why for your behavior?
He's so different from Seiz and Vin, because they ultimately achieve what he possibly set out to do. It's unclear, but as you said, Rashek was already an asshole. And maybe one of the first few things he did, like moving the planet, whatnot, it was maybe to ensure that that humanity survived. Or I don't know if they're strictly humans in that world, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, because he does also fundamentally change at least the Scar, doesn't he, to make them like hardier than normal humans?
Yeah. But somewhere on the line, I think he just said, "Okay, I've done my job. I don't care if I live in a world where there's volcanoes spewing ash, as long as I can install myself in the center of it all, be the Lord Ruler of like everything,
Yeah,
and that'll be grand. And I don't really care about anything other than that." And that's, you're absolutely right. He loses sight of perhaps what he set out to do,
yeah.
to just be a massive dick. And that's just not, you can't defend that.
Yeah, he definitely. I mean, he just commits genocide at the moment of when he's in his full power.
Well, it's going to sound horrible, but worse in some ways, because he doesn't even give people like the release of death, but he turns them into, I say, mistwraiths, which sound like a dreadful state of being.
Yeah, no,
that's a separate debate to have.
That's
the virtues of death over.
That's what I was talking about. Life,
but
yeah, I was.
No, so I think, are we both agreeing that he is a maniacal, egocentric, completely batshit insane despot?
I think we are. I think he's irredeemable. I think we've found. Is this our first irredeemable villain?
I think so. Because there's just no need to do even half the crazy things he did.
Wow.
So
cool.
I think we will revisit this when we talk about Big E.
Big E. Yeah, I think I may have picked the wrong person to have this debate over.
Well, you clearly see me as
I also think
an evil on par with the Lord Ruler.
I really don't. I just feel like, especially in the wake of sort of your Lara Wraith hot take,
yeah,
a couple of episodes like recent to that, we've had a few it's not quite ends justified means, because that makes you sound like an asshole, and you are an asshole, but not for that reason. But no, it felt like something where we would have a good debate, but I think we've had a good discussion, and we've hopefully convinced some people to go and read Mistborn. We've spoiled all of it, so
literally all of it. Yeah, even the things that aren't even in the trilogy.
Yes, we have. Spoilers, big spoilers. Calcio's not dead.
Oh, come on! Even I didn't know that.
Wait, did you not? Shit, sorry. I thought you'd done enough research.
How could you have spoiled something on the show for me? That's ridiculous.
That's so bad and also so good, and I'm both really sorry and not even slightly.
I think I did know that, actually.
Because you were talking about having like done research on the Cosmere. It's never relevant again in a Mistborn book.
The Cosmere in itself is a fascinating thing. No, but I think your idea is a very good one, and we did in fact have a good debate. Just so happened that we both agreed that some things are just way beyond the line, which is good. At least we both have a line.
This might also be a salient lesson for certain members of the British media. It is possible to have a debate on which only one side is correct.
Yes, the difference between them and us is that we're smart.
Apparently, so I keep telling myself. Okay.
We're not as dumb as them. Maybe that's a fairer way of putting it.
That's a probably fairer way of putting it. And on that bombshell, I fear.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know, rate the podcast, and leave us a comment, or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com, tweet us at zeroexpertise, check out our website expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com, or come join us on our Discord server.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes. If you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. For our next episode, we're opening yet another new door for Expertise is Overrated, as we enter the world of Firefly, asking whether the film Serenity provided us with an adequate finale to the greatest TV show of all time. Join us then for more nonsense.